My name is Rebecca Lane. I turned 30 yesterday. I used to think 30 would feel louder, like fireworks or champagne corks or some sudden sense of arrival. Instead, it arrived quietly, carrying a truth I didn't know I was ready to face. The kind of truth that doesn't announce itself, the kind that waits until you're smiling, until you're surrounded by people who love you, and then steps forward to say, "This is who he really is." 8 months. That's how long I'd been with Carl. Long enough to share keys. Long enough to know how he takes his coffee. Long enough to trust that when I say something matters, he'll treat it like it does. He was the one who insisted on throwing me a party. My apartment. Small, intimate, just close friends and family. 15 people, maybe. I remember feeling touched when he suggested it, not because I needed a party, but because effort means something to me. Thoughtfulness means something, especially now. 3 years ago, I survived a kitchen fire. I don't talk about it often, not because I'm ashamed, but because it's exhausting to keep translating trauma into language people can digest. Second-degree burns across my cheek and jaw, reconstructive surgery, months of healing. The scars faded better than anyone expected, but they never truly left. Some days they're just lines in the mirror. Other days, they're memories I can feel under my skin. And there are triggers. Anything on my face, pressure, surprise, my body reacts before my mind can catch up. The doctors explained it clinically. My therapist explained it gently. I've learned how to manage it. What I can't manage is people treating it like a punchline. Carl knew all of this. He'd seen the scars up close. He knew the story. He'd listened while I explained how certain things still sent my heart racing. How panic doesn't always make sense, but still demands respect. That's why, a week before my birthday, I sat him down and had what I thought was a simple, adult conversation. "There's just one thing," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "No cake smashing." He laughed, the easy laugh he always used when he thought I was worrying too much. "What? Like the face and the cake thing?" "Yes," I said, "that." I didn't laugh with him. "I really hate it," I continued, like, genuinely, and my doctor said I should avoid anything that could irritate my scars. It's not just physical, either. It messes with my anxiety. He waved a hand like he was brushing away smoke. Okay, I hear you." I watched his face closely then. People say they listen with their ears, but you learn more from their eyes. His weren't unkind, just amused, like I'd shared a quirky preference instead of a boundary. "I'm serious, Carl," I said. "Please promise me." He leaned over and kissed my forehead. "I promise. No cake smashing. Scout's honor." I even mentioned it to a couple of friends who were coming, just in case. Everyone was cool about it. My older sister actually frowned and said, "Why would anyone do that to you?" I felt relieved, supported, safe. That was the first mistake. The evening of the party arrived warm and easy. Laughter filled my living room. Music hummed softly in the background. Carl moved through the space like a proud host, greeting people, refilling drinks, smiling wide. He seemed happy, almost excited. When it was time for cake, he disappeared into the kitchen and came back carrying it like an offering. Chocolate, from my favorite bakery, candles already lit. I remember thinking he really did listen. Everyone gathered around. Phones came out. Someone started singing. I leaned forward, heart full, breath steady, grateful for the people who showed up for me. That's when his hand landed on the back of my head. For a split second, my brain refused to understand what was happening. There was pressure, sudden, hard. My face plunged forward into something cold and sweet and suffocating. "Cake." I heard gasps before I heard silence. Thick, heavy silence. I straightened slowly, frosting clinging to my eyelashes, chocolate smeared across my cheek, crumbs stuck in my hair. My skin burned where it made contact. Not pain exactly, something sharper, older. Carl was laughing. Not a nervous chuckle, not an oh no laugh. He clapped his hands together like he'd just pulled off a magic trick. "Oh my God," he said. "Did you see her face? Priceless." No one else laughed. My sister's mouth hung open. One of my friends muttered, "What the hell?" under his breath. I caught my mother's eyes across the room, wide, horrified, already moving toward me. And in that moment, something settled inside me. Not shock, not embarrassment. Clarity. I took a paper towel from the counter and wiped my face. Slowly, deliberately. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, waiting to see if I'd laugh it off, waiting to see if I'd make it easier for everyone else by pretending this was fine. I didn't. I stood up, walked to the door, and left my own birthday party. I didn't announce it. I didn't cry. I didn't even look back. Behind me, I heard Carl calling my name. I kept walking. The hallway outside my apartment felt colder than it should have. Not physically, emotionally. Like all the warmth I'd built inside that room had slammed shut behind me the moment the door closed. The music was muffled now. Laughter, muted, uncertain, leaked through the walls like something trying and failing to survive. I stood there for a second with my hand still hovering near the doorframe, cake drying on my skin, my heart beating too fast and too loud. My body was doing what it always did when a boundary was violated, flooding me with adrenaline, tightening my chest, pulling me backward in time. Then the door opened. "Rebecca, wait." Carl stepped into the hallway, still smiling like this was all part of the plan, like I'd simply missed my cue. "Come on," he said, lowering his voice. "It was just a joke." I looked at him, really looked at him. The frosting was still smeared along my cheekbone. My jaw ached, not from impact, but from the familiar tension that came when my body tried to protect itself after the fact. He noticed none of it, or worse, noticed and didn't care. "You're being way too sensitive," he added. "Everyone does it. It's a birthday thing." "A birthday thing," I repeated slowly. He nodded, relieved, as if we were finally on the same page. "Exactly. You're kind of killing the mood by storming out like that." There it was. Not "are you okay?" Not "I'm sorry." Not even "I messed up." Just concern for the mood, for the party, for himself. "I told you," I said, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. "I explained exactly why I couldn't handle that. You promised me you wouldn't do it." He rolled his eyes. "God, Rebecca, it's cake. You're acting like I pushed you into traffic." He let out a small laugh, then softened his tone in a way that felt practiced. "Baby, you've got to learn how to loosen up." The word hit harder than the cake had. Baby. Not affectionate, dismissive? I felt something click into place then. Not dramatically, not with anger, but with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. This was who he was when he thought he had the upper hand. "You humiliated me," I said, "in front of my family, my friends. You did the one thing I asked you not to do." He scoffed. "Humiliated? Come on, you're not a child." The irony almost made me laugh. "I think you're projecting," he continued. "You've always been intense about this stuff. Maybe you should talk to someone about that anxiety instead of taking it out on me." I stared at him for a long moment. 8 months of memories rearranged themselves in my head. Small comments I'd brushed off, jokes that landed a little too sharp, moments where he'd pushed just far enough and then smiled when I flinched. "You know what?" I said finally. "We're done." The smile vanished. "What?" "This relationship," I clarified. "It's over." His expression shifted quickly. Shock, then disbelief, then something colder. He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You're breaking up with me over cake?" he said. Wow. Wow. He shook his head like he was embarrassed for me. "You're pathetic," he added. "A total crybaby. Honestly, maybe you deserved it. Might toughen you up a little." The words didn't sting the way they were meant to, because by then, I was already gone. "Pack up whatever you have in my apartment," I said. "Leave the key on the counter. Don't contact me again." He opened his mouth to say something else, something cruel, I'm sure, but I turned and walked toward the elevator. This time I didn't hear him follow. I drove for a long time after that. No destination, just city lights and empty streets and the strange calm that comes when a decision is final. Eventually, I pulled into a 24-hour diner and sat in a booth with a mug of coffee growing cold in my hands. I wasn't crying. I wasn't doubting myself. I was relieved. When I finally got home close to midnight, my phone was buzzing with missed calls and messages. My sister. A couple of friends. One from my mother that just said, "Call me when you're home." I sat on the edge of my bed, wiped the last traces of chocolate from my hair, and stared at the quiet apartment. The party was over. So was the illusion. I slept for maybe 3 hours. Not because I was replaying the scene in my head. I wasn't. That part surprised me. I'd expected the night to unravel into a loop of what-ifs and second-guessing. But instead, my mind stayed eerily still, like it had already closed the file and moved on. Morning light crept through the blinds, pale and unforgiving. The apartment looked exactly the way I'd left it. Half-deflated balloons hovering near the ceiling, empty glasses on the counter, discarded wrapping paper scattered like evidence. My birthday, frozen mid-celebration. I made coffee and started cleaning. Slowly, methodically. It felt good to put things back where they belonged. That's when I noticed the gifts. Most of them I'd already opened the night before. Books, candles, A scarf my sister knew I'd love, but there was still one box sitting on the kitchen counter, wrapped in silver paper. I remembered Carl placing it there early in the evening, smiling to himself as he did. I hesitated. Part of me considered throwing it away unopened. Another part, the one that had survived fires and surgeries and bad instincts, needed to know. So I unwrapped it. Inside was a baby bib. Plastic, brightly colored, covered in cartoon animals. I stared at it, my brain stalling as if it couldn't quite load what my eyes were seeing. Underneath the bib was a toddler sippy cup, and at the bottom of the box, a card. I picked it up with 2 fingers. The front had a smiling cartoon baby. Inside, in Carl's handwriting. For Rebecca, the most sensitive baby girl in the universe. Maybe this will help you grow up. XOXO. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. For a long time, 10 minutes, maybe more, I didn't move. I just held the card and let the weight of it settle. This wasn't something he'd grabbed on a whim after our argument. He'd bought this, wrapped it, brought it to my birthday, placed it with the other gifts hours before he shoved my face into that cake. The humiliation wasn't accidental. It was scheduled. Suddenly, everything snapped into focus. The way he'd laughed before anyone else had a chance to react. The word baby in the hallway, delivered with such confidence. The absence of surprise when I didn't laugh along. He'd rehearsed this. Planned to make me small in front of the people I loved. Planned to frame it as humor, then punish me for not playing along. I put the items back in the box and closed it carefully, like it might explode if I didn't. My hands were steady, my chest was too. That scared me more than anger would have. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Carl. I miss you, can we talk? I didn't respond. Another message followed a few minutes later, then another. Paragraphs this time. He wrote about how he'd worked so hard on the party, how he'd only wanted everyone to have fun, how I'd embarrassed him by walking out, how I'd overreacted to a harmless prank. Then came the line that made my jaw tighten. I talked to my ex about what happened. She agrees you're being ridiculous. Normal people laugh at stuff like that. Of course he had. He always needed an audience, validation, someone to back him up so he could keep believing he was right. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my sister. Her reply came back almost instantly. Is he serious? I blocked his number. By evening, he'd found another way to reach me. New messages, new platforms, the same script. He told me I was manipulative, that I'd ruined his reputation, that breaking up with him over a joke proved I had anger issues and control problems. Not once did he say he was sorry. Not once did he acknowledge the boundary. Not once did he mention the scars on my face or why they existed. I saved everything. Not out of revenge. Not yet. I saved it because I'd learned something important in the last 24 hours. People like Carl don't stop. They rewrite. And when they do, you either let them or you make sure the truth is preserved. I looked at the closed silver box on my counter. He wanted me to feel like a child. Maybe it was time he understood what that actually felt like. By the 3rd day, the messages stopped pretending to be gentle. The shift was subtle at first, like a temperature change you don't notice until you're already uncomfortable. The I miss you texts turned into explanations. The explanations turned into accusations, and the accusations hardened into something sharper. Carl was no longer asking to talk. He was demanding to be understood. I woke up to a long message that morning. 3 full screens of text, waiting for me like an ambush. He wrote about how everyone thought I'd overreacted, how people had told him privately that I embarrassed him by leaving my own party, how my silence was cruel, manipulative, immature. He said he'd only done the cake thing because he loved me. That one made me laugh, a short, humorless sound that startled me in the quiet kitchen. Love apparently now came with conditions. If I didn't laugh when he humiliated me, I was ungrateful. If I didn't forgive him immediately, I was vindictive. If I held my ground, I was unstable. He ended the message with, "You should really talk to someone about your trauma instead of making it everyone else's problem." There it was again. Not concern, not accountability. Diagnosis. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I could feel the pattern now, how every conversation with him curved back toward the same destination, me apologizing for being hurt. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. A different number. I knew before I opened it. Carl's ex. I hadn't spoken to her, ever. I'd only met her once, in passing. One of those encounters that left no impression beyond a polite smile. Seeing her name on my screen made my stomach tighten anyway. Her message was brief. "Hey, Rebecca, Carl told me what happened. I don't want to get involved, but I think there might have been a misunderstanding. He's always been playful. Maybe you took it the wrong way. I stared at the words for a long time. This wasn't an accident. This was triangulation. He'd pulled someone from his past into the present to reinforce his version of reality, to make me doubt my own memory, to isolate me from my certainty. I took a screenshot and added it to the growing folder on my phone. Then I blocked her too. That evening, my sister came over. She didn't bring questions. She didn't bring advice. She brought takeout and quiet. We sat on the couch, knees pulled up, boxes between us. He planned it, I said finally. The gift, the cake, all of it. She didn't interrupt. I keep thinking about how confident he was, I continued, like he already knew how I'd react, like he'd rehearsed the part where he made me feel small. She exhaled slowly. That's not a joke, Becca. That's control. The word landed with weight. Control. I hadn't wanted to use it. It felt too heavy, too dramatic. But once it was spoken out loud, I couldn't unsee it. The pushing, the laughing when I protested, the way he needed witnesses. That night after she left, I went through my screenshots again. Messages, dates, times, patterns. Carl was still posting online, vague quotes about being betrayed, about loving too much, about free spirits being punished for their joy. People commented with heart emojis, with sympathy. He was curating a narrative. And I realized something else then, something that made my pulse steady instead of spike. I didn't need to correct him. I didn't need to explain myself. But I wasn't going to let him rewrite what happened either. I walked into the kitchen and opened the cabinet where I'd put the silver box, the baby bib, the cup, the card. I set them on the counter, side by side. Carl had wanted a joke. He wanted an audience. He wanted a moment that said something about who I was. Fine. I could give him one. On my terms. I didn't act right away. That surprised me too. There was a version of me, older, younger, some earlier draft, who would have fired back immediately. Who would have sent a message, posted a screenshot, demanded an apology loud enough to drown out the lie. But that version had learned the hard way that reacting quickly only fed people like Carl. He thrived on immediacy, on spectacle. So I waited. I let the silence stretch. I let him keep talking to himself in my inboxes I no longer read. I let the story he was telling online grow legs and wander. And in the quiet, an idea formed. Not revenge, not rage. Perspective. Carl had gone out of his way to plan my humiliation. He'd invested time, money, and creativity into making sure it landed. He'd wanted witnesses, context, timing. He'd wanted it to feel public. The least I could do was respect the effort. On the fourth morning after my birthday, I drove to a party supply store across town. One of those places that smells like latex balloons and sugar, shelves stacked with color-coded irony. I walked the aisles slowly, deliberately, like I was shopping for something sacred. I bought a gift box, the kind that opens in layers. Clean, neutral. Expensive enough to look intentional. Then I went home and carefully repackaged Carl's items. The bib, the sippy cup, his card. I placed them inside the box exactly as I'd found them, stacked neatly, no additions, no edits. I wasn't rewriting anything, just returning it. Almost. The last item I added was a party popper, not the cheap kind. This one was custom, ordered that morning with same-day delivery. When twisted, it would release gold streamers printed with a single phrase. Congratulations, welcome to toddler life. No names, no insults, no embellishment, just the message. I sealed the box, printed a shipping label, and looked up Carl's office address. An open floor plan, glass walls. The kind of place where deliveries got attention, whether you wanted them to or not. I scheduled it for midday. Then I went about my day. I cleaned the rest of the apartment. I went for a long walk. I didn't check my phone. I didn't rehearse conversations or imagine outcomes. I just lived. The confirmation email came in at 2:47 p.m. Delivered, signature received. 20 minutes later, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring twice before answering. What the hell is wrong with you? Carl's voice exploded through the speaker. Are you out of your mind? I didn't say anything. You sent something to my office, he continued, breathless now. Do you have any idea what you just did to me? I stayed quiet. Apparently, curiosity had done the rest. According to him, coworkers had gathered around when the package arrived. Someone had joked about the fancy box. Someone else had pulled out a phone. When the popper went off, gold streamers burst into the air, drifting down across desks and monitors. People laughed. Then they read. Then Carl opened the box. The whole office saw it, he said, his voice cracking with rage. My boss was right there. I had to explain why someone sent me baby stuff and a message calling me a toddler. Do you know how humiliating that was? I finally spoke. Now you know how it felt. Silence. I didn't add anything, I continued calmly. I didn't invent a joke. I didn't make up a message. I returned exactly what you gave me. The only difference is that this time you were the one standing there while people watched. You're sick, he snapped. This is harassment. This is abuse. I almost smiled. No, I said, this is symmetry. I hung up and blocked the number. That should have been the end of it. But apparently, someone in his office had recorded the moment the popper went off. Carl's startled jump. The streamers. His face as he read the words. The frantic way he tried to shove the items back into the box while people around him struggled not to laugh. By that evening, the video was online. The caption read, "When toxic behavior comes back to haunt you at work." I didn't post it. I didn't share it. I didn't need to. By morning, my phone was buzzing again, not with accusations this time, but with questions. From friends, from people who'd been at my party, from people who were finally seeing the whole picture. Carl had wanted a story. He just hadn't expected to lose control of the ending. The internet moves fast. Too fast for people who rely on control. By the next morning, the video had spread far beyond Carl's office. It jumped platforms the way sparks jump dry grass. First a few thousand views, then tens of thousands, then more. Comments stacked up in waves, not all of them kind, not all of them fair, but most of them clear. People recognized the pattern, the forced joke, the public humiliation, the outrage when the tables turned. Carl tried to get ahead of it. I could tell without even watching his response videos. Friends sent summaries like updates from a storm zone. In one clip, he leaned into the camera, jaw tight, insisting the baby items were an inside joke between partners. That I'd taken something playful and weaponized it. He said he was being attacked for having a sense of humor. In another, the tone shifted. Tearful, apologetic, but not to me, to the audience. He talked about internet bullying, about mental health, about how cruel strangers could be. What he never said was my name. What he never mentioned was the cake, or the conversation we'd had before the party, or the scars on my face, or the gift he'd planned days in advance. Selective truth is still a lie. People noticed. Screenshots from the night of my birthday started circulating. His own posts, still laughing about the cake smashing, calling me dramatic. Someone stitched them into his apology video. The comments turned sharp. At work, things deteriorated quickly. A mutual friend texted me that Carl's firm wasn't thrilled about becoming known as the place where an employee went viral for humiliating his partner. He was called into meetings, asked questions, given a formal warning about professionalism and conduct. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. Then, a week after the party popper incident, he showed up at my door. It was evening. I'd just finished dinner when I heard the knock, soft at first, then louder, persistent. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. Carl looked smaller somehow, unshaven, eyes red and rimmed with exhaustion. He wore sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, an odd choice for someone who used to spend an hour choosing the right jacket. "Rebecca, please," he said immediately. "I need to talk to you." I should have closed the door. Instead, surprise pinned me in place long enough for him to step inside. "The video," he said, pacing now. "The comments. It's ruining my life. My family is asking questions. People at work won't even look at me without smirking." "Carl," I said, finding my voice, "you need to leave." "No," he snapped, then softened quickly. "No, listen, I'll do anything. I'll post an apology. I'll tell everyone it was my fault. Whatever you want. Just help me make this stop." I stared at him. "I didn't post the video," I said. "Your coworker did, because they thought your behavior was ridiculous." He stopped pacing, turned toward me. "But you started this," he said. "With the baby stuff, with making me look crazy at work." I met his eyes. "I returned what you gave me," I said calmly. "You wanted to make me look like a child in public. You succeeded. Then you experienced the same thing." His face twisted. "You destroyed my life over a stupid prank," he shouted. "You think you're so much better than me now? You're nothing. A sad, scarred woman who can't take a joke." There it was. The mask fully off. "Get out," I said. "No," he replied, stepping closer. "I'm not leaving until you fix this." I walked past him and picked up my phone. When he realized what I was doing, he laughed. "You're really calling the police?" "Yes," I said. They arrived 10 minutes later. Calm, professional. They asked him to leave. He protested, raised his voice, Eventually, they escorted him out and filed a report. I didn't press charges. I didn't need to. Later that night, a new message appeared from an account I didn't recognize. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed someone who loved you. I blocked it without responding. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. The silence after he left felt different. Not fragile, not tense. Settled. I slept through the night for the first time since my birthday. No jolting awake, no racing thoughts, just rest. The kind that comes when your nervous system finally understands it's safe again. By morning, the noise had shifted away from me completely. Carl had gone nuclear online. Friends started sending screenshots, not because I asked, but because they were stunned. Post after post, story after story. He painted himself as a victim of an elaborate revenge plot, claimed I'd attacked his workplace, said I was stalking him, said he feared for his safety. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so dangerous. But here's the thing about lying in public, especially when witnesses exist. People talk, my sister commented once. Just once. Tell them what you did first. A friend from my birthday party followed with, "You left out the part where you planned to humiliate Rebecca despite her explicitly asking you not to." Carl deleted the comments within minutes. Screenshots had already been taken. Then his ex, another ex, not the one he'd used to triangulate me, posted something vague but pointed about patterns, about men who weaponize humor and then hide behind charm. People started connecting dots, quietly at first, then loudly. I stayed offline. I didn't correct the record. I didn't need to. The people who mattered already knew the truth. And the ones who didn't? They were never going to believe me anyway. That afternoon, I got a message that surprised me. From his sister. She apologized. She said Carl had told their family a very different version of events, that I'd lost control over a harmless joke, that I'd humiliated him in front of his coworkers out of spite. But once the video circulated, once people started asking questions, the story fell apart. She wrote, "I knew something was off. He's always pushed people too far and then acted shocked when there were consequences. I'm sorry he did that to you." I read the message twice. Then I closed the app. Not everything needs a response. That evening, I packed the last of Carl's things into a box and left it with the doorman. No note, no explanation. The chapter was already closed. For the first time in weeks, I made dinner without flinching at sudden sounds. I washed my face without rushing. I caught my reflection in the mirror and didn't brace myself for criticism that wasn't coming. The scars were still there. So was I. But the weight, the constant vigilance, the quiet dread of the next joke, that was gone. Carl wanted control. He wanted the story. He wanted the final word. What he didn't understand was this. When someone shows you exactly who they are, believing them isn't revenge. It's freedom. 2 weeks passed. That was all it took for the chaos to burn itself out. The video stopped circulating the way viral things eventually do, replaced by the next scandal, the next outrage, the next person learning the hard way that the internet doesn't forget, but it does move on. Carl's name faded from comment sections. His posts slowed, then stopped altogether. I heard through mutual friends that he'd taken time off work, that he'd moved back in with his parents in another state, that he was lying low. None of it surprised me. People like Carl aren't undone by one moment. They're undone by patterns becoming visible. I didn't check on him. I didn't ask for updates. His life was no longer my responsibility, and that realization felt lighter every day. What surprised me was how much space opened up once the noise disappeared. I started sleeping better, longer, deeper. My mornings weren't filled with tension or dread anymore, just quiet routines and the gentle weight of normalcy. I stopped bracing myself when my phone buzzed. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, wondering how I could have said something differently to make him understand. Because the truth is, I'd already said everything that mattered. I'd set a boundary. He'd crossed it. I'd left. Everything after that was just him refusing to accept consequences. One afternoon, I caught myself laughing in the kitchen over something stupid, a spilled drink, a crooked cabinet door, and it hit me how long it had been since laughter felt uncomplicated, since joy didn't come with a countdown or a catch. That night, I sat on the couch and scrolled through old photos. Not of Carl, those were gone, but of myself. Before the fire, after the surgeries, during the months when I rebuilt more than just skin. I'd survived worse than a cruel boyfriend. I'd survived flames. The scars on my face had once made me feel fragile, like I had to explain myself, like I had to accept whatever behavior came my way because people were trying or joking or meaning well. Now I saw them differently. They were proof. Proof that my body had healed, proof that my mind had learned, proof that I knew when to walk away. I didn't need a final confrontation. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need him to understand. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you choose when you stop reopening the door. I blocked the last remaining account that tried to reach me. I deleted the folder of screenshots from my phone. Not because I was erasing what happened, but because I no longer needed evidence to believe myself. Carl was a chapter, a loud one, a painful one, but not the whole story. I'm moving forward now, not bitter, not vengeful, just clear. And that more than anything feels like winning.